Hello, everyone. My name is Tyler Olsson. I am one of your hosts at REIMAGINE 2020. I'm also the University Program Director at MouseBelt, one of the teams behind REIMAGINE virtual events. You're tuned into REIMAGINE 2020 V2. That is version 2. Our first virtual event was back in May, where we had the pleasure to discuss with and get to know a little bit better some of our industry partners and hear about some of the interesting and innovative work that's taking place in the blockchain and cryptocurrency industry. We also had the chance to talk with some of our students at major universities all around the world that we have acquired in the past 2 or so years, out of an effort to give support to students who are eager and interested in learning more about blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies, but may not necessarily have the support structures around them at their institutions in order to study these things in a systematic way. We had such a good time and the conversation was so great, then we decided to sort of revive it and bring things back. Joining me today is Pascal Ntsama, who is a product architect at Saukibit. Saukibit is a blockchain API aggregator, which helps people in different regions of Africa access financial technologies for various reasons. Pascal, how are you, man?
I'm all right, Tyler. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, I'm glad to have you here because I have a lot of questions about Saukibit. I know that Africa is in a lot of ways a hotbed for a lot of activity in the blockchain space for
Yes.
Various reasons.
Yes.
But before we get into the specifics of your product, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get to where you are today?
So I think it started off in college. I did my undergrad at the Georgia Tech University, located in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. And I was an electrical engineering student. And at the same time, while doing my undergrad, I was very interested in innovative technologies of all sorts. I was fortunate to work on a few research projects that were in the field of electric vehicles, as well as IoT. And working in those projects kind of it encouraged me to embrace up and coming technologies and to be kind of visionary in the way I approach technologies. There's always something down the pipeline coming that is interesting, right? And so I was always curious about what is that thing that is going to be important 5 years, 10 years from now. And graduated out of college, started working as a network engineer for AT&T. I worked for AT&T for about 5 years, and then I worked for Sprint Corporation, doing almost similar work, working on IoT networks, building out IoT networks for both providers. And from there, I transitioned to product management and worked for IBM and a few other Fortune 100 corporations. But somewhere about 4 years ago, my partner Oyedeji and I, we usually get together a lot and talk about up and coming technologies. And then he was really heavy on cryptocurrency, blockchains, and peer-to-peer networks. And we decided to form a startup. There was really no objective behind starting the startup. We just started a company and then started brainstorming. This is a very interesting technology. What can we do with it? And Deji is from Nigeria and I'm from Cameroon. And both countries kind of share the similar challenges. When you look at the typical person from Cameroon or Nigeria, people are unbanked for the most part. Financial services are very restricted. So we started to have these conversations of how can we use this technology to fill the gap, the existing gap with financial services. And that basically gave birth to Saukibit, which we've been working on roughly about for 2 years. And we thought is the best place to start. We need to build the foundation. There's a universe of blockchain networks out there, which work fine, which are perfect, but they need to be perfect for the African market, right? So we kind of evaluated the best networks, which we can aggregate those APIs, and in the future build sandbox tools that FinTech solutions locally would leverage to build their solutions or integrate their existing solutions with blockchain networks.
Got it. So maybe we can back that up a bit. Could you go into a bit more detail as to what Saukibit does, and maybe sort of you can frame that around the sort of problem that it's trying to provide a solution to.
Right.
How do things work in these African regions, which sort of jogged your thinking about this project in the first place?
Yeah. So it's mostly use case based. There's a few use case that got our attention, of which there are several, right? When you look at sub-Saharan Africa, about 68%, somewhere between 68 to 64% of the adult population is still unbanked. However, there is still transaction of value occurring, right? And one of the interesting use cases which we came about was currency exchanges. If you think of some in the developed world, currency exchanges can occur in banks, in credit unions, at hotels, in different venues, right? Which, funny enough, occur in those same infrastructures in sub-Saharan Africa. But for some reason, the street currency exchange sector or industry seems to be the most attractive when it comes to that service. And it was a very interesting use case for us, which we decided to use to build an MVP product for Saukibit. Another interesting use case is remittance. The sub-Saharan African region, or Africa as a whole, probably falls somewhere between second to third in terms of the amounts of remittance annually. So if you can think of the amounts of service fees that are being charged to send money across borders that are very high, right? What if we can do that on a blockchain network that is already built to execute those same services, but for way cheaper? So we have multiples of those use cases. And I think for now, what we have selected to go with is the currency traders. We believe that they're kind of at risk. It's been an industry that has functioned for decades with no disruptions. But now, if you look at how technology is increasing and propagating, and almost everyone has a mobile phone, now there is this threat that there might be a new method of exchanges for currencies. And what if we could, sustain that market with a cryptocurrency option where exchange of value can now occur in a digital form, just like how it occurs in a cash form today.
So is there is there going to be some sort of need to, I guess, onboard these people that are using these street currencies that you refer to using cryptocurrencies, or what are the street currencies that you're talking about here? Would they be tokenized onto a blockchain network, or are we talking about a full migration away from the currency as like the form that it currently takes for these people, and then moving them into cryptocurrencies exclusively? How does that work?
Yeah, so we kind of look at it like alternatives, right? Right now, the go-to converter is the US dollar. That is the reference point. And if we take the scenario of the Naira has basically suffered some inflation lately. It's moved somewhere between 350 per US dollar to 460 or so. And during that transition, a lot of currency exchange agents were looking at alternatives, right? How can we secure the value of these assets in Nairas? And what if they had the option to somehow convert that cash value of Naira that they had to cryptocurrency? And also, what if their customers that wanted to trade their Naira or their US dollars for either one could also have an option of doing so with cryptocurrency? It's just another alternative to storing value and preserving value on both ends. So that's the way we look at it. We do not believe the whole service is going to move into a digital form, right? Because at the end of the day, the economy is still cash economy, but there could be an alternative which both sides, the service provider and the customer, can rely on to retain the value of their assets.
Right. Okay, I
So,
see. So,
like thinking of it as a network, right? It's just using a network layer on top of the service that already exists. And what is perfect about it is the street currency exchange industries in most sub-Saharan African countries decentralized in nature, right? It's a peer-to-peer type of a service. There's no single regulatory body in each of those nations that controls how much is being traded, who is trading, where are they located, where are they doing business, who are they trading to. So none of that happens. The best regulatory framework that they try to put in place is basically putting a cap on the rates, on the exchange rates for street exchanges. But so it's kind of decentralized in nature. And if you look at blockchain technology, it's decentralized, it's peer-to-peer, both network and the nature of how the service is being done have the same characteristic. So what if you were just to merge them, right? Because they're already a perfect fit of each other. And that is what really attracts us to that use case.
right. So yeah. So like, I like the way that you had phrased that. You said it's not necessarily about a sort of zero sum game where you have to get these people to kind of abandon the old street currencies that they're used to, but it's more like you're sort of utilizing the network layer as a sort of vehicle for transfer or for exchange where it may not be immediately accessible to somebody in some sort of region, right? So if you had to, right, travel from one region of Africa to another, right? You could just utilize that network layer to sort of get your currency in one form to another, right? Without running into the risk of sort of carrying large amounts of this sort of tangible, if you will, currency across borders where there may be certain kind of restrictions in place, or if you're trying to sort of, I guess, save on the cost of sort of your exchange rates or sort of the transfer, all of that, right? You're saying that it's just a way of utilizing the network as a vehicle of transfer to kind of like reduce the risk in a number of different ways. So is there some sort of marketing campaign that you have? I mean, do you have anybody on the ground that sort of goes to these street currency exchanges and you sort of let them know about this new sort of vehicle, if you will? How do you actually get it implemented at the ground level?
Yeah, so we are actually in contact with 40 currency exchange agents in Nigeria specifically. So Nigeria is our first frontier of trying to address that challenge. We are constantly in contact with them, and we're basically reviewing different use cases which they have just within their line of work. They have certain interesting use cases as e-commerce. Some currency exchange agents are also in the business of buying and selling things online, and they want to understand how can we use this to purchase items from Dubai. And we found out of the group of 40, there were other currency exchange agents that were interested in using cryptocurrency to purchase vehicles in India. So we have all these use cases that are just blooming and we're constantly reviewing them and trying to convert those into pain points and opportunities which we can address with some type of blockchain solution. So we have one person on the ground right now with them, and pretty much they represent us there, but on a bi-weekly basis we have conference calls with them when they join, and they're pretty much growing along with Saukibit. As we're building the network infrastructures, we're kind of growing with our first customer for our first MVP, and or we can say first users of our MVP product, and it's just a perfect scenario for us.
I see. So the use cases are already there. The sort of demand, if you will, is already there, right? So it's just a matter of like finding these people that are may already be willing to accept it, right? You just need to sort of give them that exposure. You know, I wonder, do you think that that actually makes Africa a sort of more promising region of the world for the development of cryptocurrency, financial technologies, blockchains going forward? Because there is, I guess, well, let me put it this way. In the sort of Western world, it seems like initially these new technologies were met with a lot of resistance because it sort of challenged the status quo, right? There was sort of it threatened, if you will, the sort of existing paradigm. But I sort of wonder what you think about the fact that Africa may not have such a robust infrastructure in place. Does that sort of make it a sort of hotbed? I mean, like, does that sort of give it a little bit of cutting edge with respect to the development of these new financial technologies?
Yes, we have to think about it kind of a supply and demand scenario. If you think of the developed world, right, specifically in the US, there are multiple ways you can send, you can do transactions, right, from one person to the other. You can use Venmo, you can use Cash App, you can use Zelle, you can, you know, you name it. But then when you look at your typical sub-Saharan African country, the options are very limited. You either have mobile money, which is dominating right now, and which makes sense. It's all done by the mobile operator. Most people have phones right now and have more than a 4G functional phone. But apart from mobile money, there's still a large group of people that are unbanked, and there is still a lot of infrastructure challenges and a lot of, I would say, policy challenges as well that restrict the use and of different financial tools similar to the developed world. But what is good about blockchain is a network that no single entity manages. It's a network. Most blockchains are public. Anyone can gain access to them. Then there is this dependency on connectivity and quality of connectivity, which is actually being addressed now. The typical adult in most sub-Saharan African nations operate a mobile phone, right? And if they cannot connect via internet, there are other types of um, connections through USSD or SMS that could still um, let them leverage services that run on the internet. So there's kind of this very high demand already and limited supply. So it is a hotbed for all sorts of technologies, right? And I'm sure it applies to almost every sector, not just financial. It's attracting the likes of a lot of big um, corporations in the US as well. Visa, Facebook, everyone has focused on the African continent and trying to understand how do we connect, how do we supply financial services to the remaining 68% of adults that don't have bank accounts now, that still go in their daily lives buying, making purchases and handing over cash and so on and so forth. So it's kind of, I think there would be two phases. The first phase is kind of like the first to solve the issue. And the second phase is going to be how does that become sustainable over time, right? If you look at the option of Facebook, or I would say not just Facebook, but the typical startup from the developed world would provide maybe some type of financial solution that relies on cards, right? But if the average person doesn't have a bank account or some form of a credit card, how do they use your application? So those two phases will be very important, and we hope to basically capture those two phases as they occur.
I'd love to hear it, putting the power back in the hands of the people while also giving them access to what has become now arguably the single most important technological asset that we have today, namely the internet. Bringing
Right.
those two worlds together.
Right.
Pascal, we're starting to run out of time here, so I'm going to sort of leave you with one last question. You
Yes.
know, I think it's safe to say that these new financial technologies, blockchain, distributed networks, distributed databases, and cryptocurrencies, and all that comes with them, I think it's safe to say that they are disrupting things. And I think in a good way, yeah, they are disrupting the system, if you will. Do you have any last words or any sort of beacon of hope for those people out there that might still be skeptical as to the power and the profound impact that all of this is going to have on the world that we live in going forward?
Yeah. I think, like many other technologies, there have been a lot of skeptics and a lot of criticisms around those technologies in the very early stages. That is uncontrollable. And there's only one thing that is going to matter over time is what impact does that technology have, right? What social impact does it have? What value does it produce for the user? And if we look at the cryptocurrency space specifically, most of the traffic of transactions of cryptocurrencies that we see are based off people trying to leverage the price of the coin. So we're going to have to transition from that being the most important use case to it actually being more of a utility where people can use cryptocurrencies to pay for typical services on a day-to-day basis. So it's a transition. It's going to take time. And actually, we need those criticisms and we need those skeptics, because those skeptics are going to motivate us to solve that transition. How do we go from this almost $1 trillion of currency trading to potentially building, subsets of economies, digital economies that actually add value to the average human. And I think it's going to happen over time. We're in the early phases. Saukibit hopefully will be part of the companies that take on that challenge in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're definitely on the path to it.
Well, there you have it, folks. Saukibit offering street currency exchange and other financial technology solutions in Africa. Pascal Ntsama, I really appreciate you for taking some time to sort of enlighten us a little bit today as to what you got going on in your corner of the world. Is there a website that you can plug?
Yeah,
maybe people can check it out.
www.saukibit.com. That's SAUKIBIT.com.
Got it. Well, Pascal, thanks again for joining me, man. We'll catch you next time.